What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Step by Step, the Micro-Budget Filmmaker. I'm Nick Bowman.
I'm Naim David.
I'm William Chaffin.
And this week's episode, we kind of wanted to do I guess this is another little bit of a motivational episode. We like to do these from time to time. So you were talking about how you were having a conversation with someone recently who is interested in working on Guilt, which we're going to be shooting at this time we're recording this in about a couple weeks or so.
About 3 weeks.
Yep, 3 weeks or so. And you met, and you kind of, after talking with him, you kind of wanted to do an episode that's kind of wanting to talk about, defeating this mentality that sort of first-time filmmakers have.
Yes. So I had a meeting with a young filmmaker, and he had talked about wanting to put together a feature. So him and I had already connected through networking, and he's going to come down and help as like in the project. But we were just talking about how he has not done a feature yet, and he is only a year or so out of film school, and he's getting ready to do he's written his first short, and I was like, that's where you need to start. He's like, oh, okay. I was like, don't even think about a feature. You've got things you got to figure out, because there's so many things to a feature that people need to think about. So anyway, I was telling Naim about it. Mm-hmm. We were having a conversation, and then you said, we need to do a podcast on this.
We need to do an episode about this because this is a very important thing to talk about.
Yes.
Right. So many people are talking about the cameras and the types of movies and all of these things, but you got to get down into the nitty gritty of this. And some of this is going to be stuff. I always say sometimes it's what you need to hear, not necessarily what you want to hear.
Yeah.
And what I'm finding is a lot of filmmakers want to jump right to the feature, or they get stuck in the short film world and are too afraid to do the feature. So this is really about changing your mentality and preparing yourself properly and setting goals for yourself. And we've talked about it, and sort of the advice that I gave him was very simple. Like, look, the feature should be your goal. Don't make it precious. Everybody wants to make everything precious. Everything's got to look perfect and sound. No. I have features out there that I watch and I cringe at because of elements, but they're out there. They're distributed. And if you don't do that, everything else is really irrelevant. But because I got those films distributed, I was able to then raise money for Guilt with investors. Would guarantee you never would have raised that money if not for those other features that I made. I wouldn't have made those other features if not for the early projects that I completely screwed up, right?
Yeah.
It's like Robert Rodriguez says, you got 12 bad movies in you, you better get them out while it's early and cheap.
Exactly.
And that's what I did. So my advice to him was very simple. Spend the next year to 2 years, like if you're a year out of film school, you're in a good place. Spend the next year to 2 years making as many shorts as you can. And I said, keep them small and all this kind of stuff. And in his script, he said it was 5 pages. I'm like, that's perfect. He's already writing it in Final Draft. I was like, perfect. It's in the screenwriting software. Don't write it in Word and crap. And I said, so you're off to he's like, well, I've done 7 drafts. I was like, well, that's your first problem right there. It's a short film. You're done.
Yeah, it's a 5-page thing. 7 drafts doesn't need to have.
You don't need more than...
Doesn't need, how many drafts are you going to do, right? I was like, go make it. Just go make it.
Yeah.
Because you need to learn, because it's not just about making the movie. There's so many things that go into it. This is what I was telling him. I was like, you got to learn how to schedule.
Communicate with people. Being like very, the communication is key.
Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate. Collaborating is key. You have to be able to do all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
you're not going to learn that by just jumping in and doing a feature.
If you're going to jump into a feature and not having any prior knowledge about anything, about how to even hold a fucking camera, like on a short film, then I think you're doing yourself a disservice. And you're wasting a lot of fucking money, making a feature when you can use some of that money to make shorts. Now, my shorts have always been no budget.
Yeah.
And if there's a budget, I'm feeding.
You're a perfect example of this because you've made a feature, which got distribution. You're getting ready to prepare your next feature. So what did you do? You decided you wanted to DP your own feature. So you went out and specifically practiced to do that by making these little short films. You got your camera, you got a couple actors you knew, and you made it. And you did 4 short films in the span of less than 6 months.
Yes.
And that was my advice to him. I was like, go make 4 or 5 shorts over the next year.
Now, having said that, I was already making shorts way before that.
True.
I was already practicing. And it's funny because we come from different things. You started out in features, right? You started doing...
No, I did some shorts. I did videography work early. I worked in like So I started out as an actor and studied theater. And then when I got cast in a feature that locally in Cincinnati, that was when I first got bit by the directing bug. So then I went to audio video school. Back then, we didn't have a lot of the film schools and media schools that they have now. So I just went to it was like a 9-month course.
Okay.
And then I started working in TV and doing mostly like camera work, like studio. I filmed the horse races and some of the horse tracks, like that kind of stuff. And then we did our own production company where we did like local small business commercials, wedding videos, like that kind of stuff. And then since we had our own equipment for the production company, we went and made a couple of short films. So I made a couple of shorts.
So you had the experience, you had the knowledge.
I made the mistake of the first film that I directed, which was called Never Fade.
Okay.
I made it with my buddy Scott, who we grew up together and we got into acting together and we went out to LA together and all that stuff. And we thought we were making a feature.
Yeah.
But we didn't have the script formatted right. So it ended up being 60 minutes. And it wasn't a feature. And we thought it was a feature. And it got into some film festival because I think they felt sorry for us because it was terrible. All this different stuff. So I had to learn from all that. So I speak from experience. And I don't say this stuff, and you don't say it. None of us say this stuff because we're know-it-alls and we think we know everything that's right.
Because we've done it before.
We've screwed it up.
Yeah.
Right? You went big on Dilemma on your short, which was...
Which wasn't my first short. I made prior shorts, but that was the one where I was like, let me go a little bit bigger. Let me go 30 pages. Let me do a little bit, half-hour type stuff.
Right.
Just to
So you've talked about, like, you went with the bigger crew. You did all the things that you thought you were supposed to.
I went Hollywood with it, and it just...
made it harder to make.
It made it harder. There's no reason to go, I should have had, like, at least 5 people on set at all times. I should have done everything myself instead of trying to collaborate with other people, which was nice, but at the same time, I could have done it all myself.
Well, even if you want to collaborate with a couple of people, you can keep a small crew of, a DP, a sound person, right? Your DP can run his own camera. You don't need an assistant cameraman. If you have that smaller crew, you don't really need an assistant director. Assistant director's job is to schedule the movie and keep everybody on schedule. But if you have such few people, in Hollywood terms, you need that because you have assistant camera operator B, camera
There's
operator
hundreds of people
A.
on set.
There's 100 people on set, right? Well, the reason that Hollywood works that way is because of unions. You have to have these things. You have one guy. All his job is to plug shit in. He's called the electrician. He's not allowed to grab the cables. He's not allowed to move the stand. He has to plug shit in. That's how union stuff works in Hollywood. But we have this mentality that to be a real movie, we need all of this stuff.
You need all of that.
And we don't need all that. Because on indies where you don't have unions, one guy can do a bunch of different stuff, or one person can do a bunch of different stuff.
So basically what you're
just
trying to say...
Just going to warn you, this is really going to get Naim going. He's going to go.
Basically what you're trying to say is you don't have to go Hollywood on a fucking indie feature, a micro-budget feature, because you're not Hollywood.
You're not
and
Hollywood.
It's okay if you're not Hollywood,
okay.
because a lot of fucking movies out there are not Hollywood, and yet they still make it past the fucking mold.
Right.
Now, that's because either, they timing and luck, and they actually went out and did that.
We just have access to such better technical equipment today.
Yeah.
That you can do something that has, and you don't even need to call it Hollywood. It just looks better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You can shoot on, even if you shoot on 1080p, it just looks better. If you know how to film and light something, right, you can make stuff look cinematic with an HD camera and a couple of good lights, right? Get good sound recording, get good sound design, and you're going to be fine. Then it becomes about the story and the characters, which is what it all comes back to anyway. Yeah. No indie movie has ever been a hit where they're like, the story and the acting sucks, but it looked really good. Yeah. No indie movie has ever, no movie has ever been successful that says that about it. The audience doesn't come out. The audience only cares about who's in it, what's it about.
Yes, exactly.
It's always the question.
And if they come out, it's like, it looked good, but I didn't really care for it.
Yeah. Special effects were good, the rest of it was boring.
Yeah.
That's what you'll get, right?
Yeah.
So we got to stop making films to impress other filmmakers because they're not our audience. Yeah. Our audience is the movie fans.
Yes.
So that's the first mindset you got to change, right? So check that one off, right? You got to get away from trying to impress other filmmakers. If you're trying to impress other filmmakers, you're just feeding your ego. That's what you're doing. Put the ego away.
Exactly. And you can get opinions from other filmmakers, close filmmakers that if you wanted to for a cut. But other than that, there's not really, you got to go to your audience, like your target audience. Test it with them. Basically.
Right. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it. When I write a script, you're two of the people I send it to. I got 2 or 3 other people that I send it to who I know will give me their honest opinion.
Oh, yeah.
But you all have very diverse backgrounds. as people, as filmmakers, as moviegoers, everything. So I specifically look at getting a diverse group of people to look at my script to give me their feedback. And then what I look for are, am I getting consistent feedback on the same things? This didn't make sense. This isn't very clear. It needs to be more, whatever the feedback is.
Right.
And so that was my thing, is like, go make the shorts. But then,
don't make shorts. Don't make shorts that are like fucking $10,000, $5,000.
No,
Right.
you don't need to
make them for nothing.
Make them for nothing. Use what you have. Use your house. Use a car. Use whatever. That's what I did. If you see all my shorts, it's stuff that I had access to.
Right.
Like, legit, all of it. And they kind of have.
You have some
one
shorts that
location,
were shot
too.
in the same location,
Yeah.
but they look different
Yes.
because you made them look different.
Yeah.
You shot them in different parts of the same. I mean, in my film Devil's Point, which is a feature, we took one person's house that had 3 levels, and we used all 3 levels as 3 different locations. And when you watch the movie, you have no idea.
Because nobody knows. Nobody knows except for you.
Nobody's going to pay. Nobody's going to
knows
pay
what it
attention
is.
to
Who
that.
cares?
Nobody
Yeah.
knows what house.
And
it's
I did.
in.
I did.
And if they
I
do,
did-
they're going to be like the most nitpicky people that you'll ever like.
Right, and those are the people that are irrelevant because
Yes.
they're not the audience that you're targeting. You're always going to have those people. I mean, big budget movies have those people. So you got to stop worrying about that stuff, and you got to stop worrying about what if people don't like it. Fuck them.
Exactly.
You got to have this attitude. I'm telling you, the attitude and the mentality is everything.
Yeah.
So go make your shorts and practice, because what you need to practice is not only the filmmaking part, right, the storytelling part of making a good story, getting good performances, shooting, editing, sound. It's also all the prep, right? Scouting the location and seeing how you're going to light a scene, right? Or scheduling and making sure that everybody's available for the weekend that you want to shoot and the time frames. And then trying to be accurate and say, look, I'm not going to abuse people's time. Don't ask someone to show up at 8 a.m. and then they sit there for 6 hours before they finally shoot.
I've been on
It's
this.
a-
I've been on,
Abuse, I
been
have
on
too.
those sets.
Abuse of and lacking respect for other people's time.
Yeah.
When I schedule my features, I put on there. I had one of the actors say, "Do you have an idea what time frame we're going to be there?" And they said, "Why don't you put that on the schedule?" And I was like, "That's a fucking fantastic idea." So I took their idea and I started putting. I don't know what film I did this on, but I started putting the time frames. And I'll say, "Yeah, you'll only be on set from like 6 to 8 or 6 to 9 or whatever, or you'll be there all day." And that helps me, like, when we were prepping Guilt, I had the same conversation with our special effects makeup artist. I went through the schedule with her, and I was like, look, these 5, she's on there 6 days. 5 of the 6 days, she's only on there for a scene.
Yeah, you don't have to be. Not every crew member has to be there every fucking day.
Right. And that's the other
That's
thing.
the thing that, yeah.
If
that's
you
always-
schedule really, really carefully, whether it's the short film or the feature, you'll know this scene, I need extra people. I need someone to help with stunts, or I need someone to help with special effects makeup, or whatever. And then the rest of the time, I just need my DP and my sound person. Or I'm shooting it myself, I just need my sound person.
And how do you know all this, by the way? How do you know?
Because I fucked it up the first time.
And you practice.
Exactly,
You
yeah.
practice. And that's what a lot of people don't want to do. They don't want to go out and practice. They just want to jump right into it. And it's like playing or doing anything else. You got to practice before you can move on to the bigger.
I'm a huge sports fan, and I use the sports analogy. If I don't go and get 10,000 swings in baseball, I'm not going to be able to hit good pitching.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same mentality here. If I don't go practice these things, I'm not going to be able to translate that to a feature. And then your feature will be shit.
Mm-hmm.
So make the shorts when they don't cost any money. Because here's the thing: if you write a 5-page short, which is similar to what you've done, you shoot those in a weekend, maybe a day.
Yeah,
Day or
2
two.
days.
Yeah.
That's it.
You know, so you shoot it over a weekend, right? So you spend a couple of weeks before that prepping it. You get your cast, you get whatever crew you're going to get. You set in on a certain weekend. Everybody's on the same page. You go walk through that location so you have a general idea of what you're going to do. You talk to your actors about their characters. You're ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
You go shoot it. You spend a couple weeks editing, sound, music, whatever you're doing to it. And then, depending on what you think of the movie, I would then take it and show it to people.
Mm-hmm.
People whose opinion you'll get their honest opinion. People who won't scratch your back. And
Don't
tell
show
you.
it to everybody.
Right.
You know.
3-4 people. And just ask them their honest opinion. People will tell you what they think, not hand you a line of bullshit. Oh yeah, that's great. You don't want those kind of people. Those are not the people you want to surround yourself.
You're always going to want your handful of people that are going to give you their honest opinion.
Right. And then decide, do I just want to pop this thing on YouTube and move on to the next thing? Is this really good? Should I go submit it to film festivals? Those kind of things. The first one you do is probably not going to be good enough.
The first one I made, it's called Flashbang, and it's out there. It's on YouTube. I just put it out there. I submitted to film festivals, because I got some good feedback. They said it was very emotional, but you're lacking this or you're lacking that. So what I made another one and I focused on what they said. And it got better, and you get better, and you get better, and you get better, and you focus. Now, doing all those shorts, you figure out, I don't want to DP, man. I just want to produce. Or I don't want to produce, man. I just want to direct. I just want to write.
I don't want to write. I don't want to. Or you say, I like this. I like to write and direct, but I don't want to shoot and edit. Whatever it is, yeah.
And that's how you learn and how you
figure
know.
it out.
You figure it out.
This filmmaker that I was talking to, I said, go do everything yourself. Because he specifically went to school for cinematography, and I was like, well, if you just want to be a cinematographer, I'm sure you can find plenty of people who want to hire a DP for nothing.
Yeah, reach out.
For sure.
Right? You can network and find plenty of people that'll do that. But if you want to make your own stuff and write your own things, then go make your own stuff.
Do it. Like, what's stopping you?
Yeah, there's nothing stopping you. Right?
I did it myself.
You can shoot. You can get basically an editing software for. I mean, I can get Final Cut for $300.
And if you're a student, it's like half off.
Right.
For sure,
you can pay monthly for Premiere. So pretty much anybody can get access to editing. Everybody has a phone or camera in their phone, so you can go shoot with that if you have to. Especially when you're just learning.
Writer Duet, free software.
Right.
You don't have to get.
If you've gone to film school and you have access to free cameras, you borrow one of their cameras. Don't worry about what all the stuff is, especially when you're making the shorts. Do you care a little bit more about that when you do the feature? Of course.
Well, of course.
But still not to this crazy level that it's got to be 6K, 8K, or 24K or whatever the hell we're at this point. Like, you don't need all that stuff, right? And that's the mentality. But then you have this other mentality of these people who've made shorts. We know some, and that's all they've made. And we're like, dude, your shorts are really, really good. Why are you still making shorts? Why aren't you making a feature? So then they get stuck in that mentality. Well, I don't know. I'm really worried about making the feature. It's a feature. Dude, you could take all of the short films you've made and put them together and you'd have a feature. So why not just spend all that time that you've spent all these last couple of years making shorts and just spend the next couple of years making a feature?
Yeah.
Like, once you're ready to do it, then it's time to do it. And you should kind of be able to figure it out.
I felt so like there was one point where I made enough shorts, and at one point in my life I was like, I just put it out there. I just want to make a feature by the time I'm like 24. And I was like 23, 22 at the time. And I was like, I set a goal for myself. And I wanted to because I've done enough shorts, and I know I was being antsy. I was like, I think it's time for me to make a feature because I'm not getting any fucking younger.
Is this older. When you eventually got to Dilemma? Is that what?
No, this was after Dilemma.
Oh, this was after.
This is after Dilemma. This is after I really like.
This is probably around the time you and I met.
This is afterwards. And I felt like the timing was right to make a feature, and it just so happened you messaged me with all that kind of stuff with Darkest Edge, and you did it, and we got that done. And
I think that was the best thing that could have happened to you at that time, because you had just come to that decision, and we literally just threw you in the fire, so there was no time to second guess yourself.
Yeah, that's it. I accepted it.
You just accepted. You did it. You jumped in. You pitched your thing to Joe. Joe liked it. I liked it, which I knew I would. And boom, you were off and running. So there was no time to like second guess, like, should I be doing this? Should I not be doing it? Am I ready for this? Like, there was none of that. You just went.
Yeah.
And is it a perfect film? No, but it's a good film. You got worldwide VOD distribution with indie rights.
First film. It doesn't happen often.
It doesn't happen often. You know what I mean? Is it setting the world on fire, making tons of money?
Hell no.
No. But that's not the
that's not
you got to build to that.
People will take you seriously if you have something distributed. Oh, he can make something. We can trust him with this amount of money, or we can trust him with a crew and a cast. It just shows that you know how to bring people together and make a finished product. And we made that under what, a year?
Oh yeah, easily.
See, the problem is with filmmakers too is they take so long to make something.
It's because they slave over it.
And they slave over it. It's like, why? Short films take max a week. Max.
Watch any business show, Shark Tank, any of these types of shows, right? And business people are decisive. They see it, they know it, they move. They don't second guess and go, oh, what if this happens? And oh my God, what if that happens? If shit goes wrong, guess what you can do? Go make another one.
Do it again.
Yeah. Right?
And you can fail in public or fail in private. It doesn't matter. I failed in public. I released all my shorts on YouTube. I wanted feedback. I wanted everybody to see. I wanted my progression. I wanted to show my progression as a filmmaker. So from like the first movie the short I made to now, there's a definite.
Oh, easily.
Like, there's a different thing, and also there's like you find your voice and you find your style through short films instead of jumping right into a feature and you have no idea what you want to say. You have no idea what you want to talk about. You have no idea what you want to
I went through that doing features because I made that first film, which I thought was a feature, was a short, and then we actually made like a 20-minute short that a friend of mine wrote. So we made that, and then we were talking about together making a feature. It didn't work out. I ended up writing my own feature, but I wasn't sure what kind of filmmaker I wanted to be yet, because I did make my first feature at 24, just like you were talking about, and it was called The Joining. Mm-hmm. And that's the one I've talked about where I said we used to put the electrical tape on the mini DV camera to get the 2:8:5 ratio, all that stuff. And I always loved supernatural thrillers, and that's what that was. But I didn't know that was the kind of filmmaker I wanted to be yet. It wasn't until after my first 3 features that I figured it out. Mm-hmm. Right? But I made, literally The Joining, I made for nothing. Like, I put barely any money into it. You know what I mean? Then when we went and did Hallowed Ground, which was an action horror film that had supernatural elements to it, I think we spent less than $2,000. So that was sort of my process, right? So you did a lot of that on shorts. I figured it out on features, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, figure this out on shorts. Because what hurt me is that, so The Joining took me a solid year to make, mm-hmm. and then I shot that, and then I didn't shoot Hallowed Ground for almost 3 years later.
Yeah.
So there was that gap in between where I was networking and meeting people and doing different stuff, but I wasn't making anything. And that's the mistake that I made early on, because if I would have went and took that time and made short films to learn, but I had that messed up mentality that it had to be a feature and it had to go this and it had to do that, and it didn't. And that was the mistake that I made. And that's why I say this stuff. Like, I made that mistake. Mm-hmm. And if you do what you did, where you made these short films, you could, put them on YouTube and do those things, you're not spending any money. And in a span of a year that it took to make one feature, I could make 4 or 5 shorts. And I would learn so much more, because you go through the phases of filmmaking that we talked about, like the prep, the shoot, the edit, the distribution, and the feedback of the audience. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You go through all of that. But if you make a feature right off the bat, like I did, pretty much like I did, you have all this time before you get to the feedback part. So those mistakes that you made on that feature, you don't get to correct them again until you do another feature, right? Yeah. To where if I'd have done the shorts, that first feature would have been so much better. Mm-hmm. And that was really the kicker for me. And that's why I was like, no, don't do this.
And not only that, you know how to communicate with people through the shorts. Like, you know how to work a set, basically. And if you don't know how to work a set and you're doing on a feature for the first time, and you're in charge of it, then you're fucked.
Well, the lessons I learned, so I did Hallowed Ground, was my second feature. And we had way too many characters. I mean, we had probably 18 characters in this movie.
We got to talk about that. We got to talk about, we talk about that kind of stuff, but you got to make it on what you have access to.
We went way too big with it. Yeah. We had stunts. We had all this stuff, right? And when we did back then, we didn't have nearly the networking that goes on now with social media and all the different filmmaker groups and stuff like that. So now we can easily tap people from Louisville, Lexington, up in Cleveland. Like, we can go all over Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana. Like, we can hit 3 different states. Back then, it was pretty much local. I think we had 30 actors audition. Mm-hmm. We had to cast 18 of them.
Damn.
Right? So we cast people who really just wanted the opportunity to be in a movie. They didn't really want to be in that kind of movie. Okay. And that was the lesson I learned from that movie, was when I moved forward, I was like, I got to make sure that I get people who want to make this kind of movie. And that's what I started doing after that. And I had much better atmosphere on set, camaraderie, attitudes, all those things. But if I would have learned that on a short, I could have made a few shorts and learned that. Mm-hmm. My features wouldn't have suffered the way that they suffered early on. Because basically my first 3 shorts were my film school. Or my first 3 features, were my film school. But I made those over the span of 7 years. Mm-hmm. So my 20s were spent making these 3 movies. Mm-hmm. When I could have made how many shorts? Even if that time I would have done 2 shorts a year, I could have done 10 shorts. Yeah. Right before I made my first feature. And I've been in so much better shape.
Now, having said all this, we know there are extenuating circumstances, not extenuating. What's the word? Whatever. There's.
I know what you're trying to say.
Yes. There's a word.
There's a word for it. I know what you're trying to say.
We call this as a brain fart.
We'll find the word.
Basically,
we'll find the word after you get
if you got a job, mm-hmm. you got this, you got that.
Right.
I get it. We get it. There's a whole thing there. But at the same time, you got school. But if you really want to do it, you find a way to do it.
And
it's easier said than done.
There's a different set of beliefs out there. So I've heard some people on other podcasts talk about being in the industry. So doing some sort of film or video, mm-hmm. if you're an editor or you shoot or whatever, that's cool. and then you go do your projects on the side. But you're in it, you're learning, you're developing. Okay,
making networking.
There's definitely positives to that. In my opinion, there's also negatives. The negative side of that is you get burnt out, and then you know if you're sitting editing all day, do you want to go home and edit on your movie?
Yeah,
you're exhausted. Yeah. So where's your creative juices going? Right, you just kind of right. The other thing, the schedule. The schedule in video production is outrageous. I know when I did it, it was weird hours, nights, weekends, and all kinds of stuff. But when you go to make your project, the best time to make it's evenings, weekends, right? So I made the decision to work in something that was more of a 9-to-5 gig, you know, finance, banking, that kind of stuff, which would then give me the money to live, pay my bills, do other things that I love to do, which outside of film, but then have my evenings and weekends to go make those movies.
Sure.
Right.
And that's the way I did it. And I think it's worked out better for me personally, because if I would have done video because I did do video for 3 years while I was also making the shorts, and I got burnt out. Like I didn't want to do it as much. But that's my personality. Everybody's different. So you got to kind of find that part of it too, where I didn't really want to do this other video production. Like I did the commercials, didn't like it. Did the wedding videos, didn't like it. You know what I mean? I worked in TV doing camera, didn't really like it. Like there was no passion there. I was like, it's okay, but it didn't pay very good. The hours sucked. So I'm like, if I was getting paid buku money, that'd be different, right? But I wasn't. So I was like, I need to make more money and then go make my features. And then that also gives you money that you could potentially put into your projects a little bit at a time, whether it's upgrading camera, upgrading editing, whatever. Those things come into play. But I really think that that's another element to it as well.
Yeah. And I think there was one thing I wanted to mention about, you know, when you're making these types of shorts and or features, and you want to, like you don't want to go too high concept. You want to do it to where, like, I want to get back to that because I think it's very fucking important, because a lot of people make things with too many characters, too many locations, and they get fucked and they can't finish a movie. You got to start
you
small.
Get in there and you, like I did with Hollow Ground, where you get too many people who are like, I'm just kind of here going through the motions.
And too many cooks in the kitchen too. Like there's too many opinions, too many people. Like if you don't know how to control a set, you're fucked.
That's another.
You just need to know the basic fundamentals of what you need on a set. Right. And then you can once you start to make more, then you can start adding on different.
You learn about how to scale up and scale down and do those kind of things.
Exactly, and that's the other thing is just like going back to like the scheduling thing for a little bit. Is, you know, like in my early PA days, like I worked on this one specific set where there was a hair and makeup artist who didn't have to be there technically till like 2:00, right? And the director had her show up at like 8:00 in the morning. Oh. And I was like, why would you make her wait all this time?
Yeah,
like,
you're just wasting someone's time because you think you're important, or you think your movie's too important, you know. And the way people will so appreciate just the fact that you respect their time, and if you can give them a really good time frame, I overestimate. So if I think someone's going to be there for 2 hours, I'll tell them 4. You know what I mean? Something like that. You know, that's how I used to do it.
And it kind of boosts morale a little bit. Like, we got done early.
Yeah, if I say, we're going to wrap at 5 and we wrap at 4, I'm like, damn, we wrapped early. Yeah. We never wrap early. You know what I mean? I remember one of the actors when I was doing Choice last year before the pandemic, Annalise came on, who was in Darkest Edge.
Right.
And I think I had her come at like 2:00. And she did 2 scenes. We shot him. It was in the lobby of this office building.
Right.
I'm shooting myself.
Yeah.
So I'm just running a camera, and she's like, I thought we were going to be here like midnight. I was like,
no,
that's not that's not big.
No, she was in and out in 3 hours, and she was like, "Whoa!" Like, you know, and I even put the time frame on the schedule. She just was just like, "That's never gonna happen." And
that's how your shorts. That's how your shorts have been too. Because because I've done a couple of yours, and like we've been there like I don't know, we'll get there at like 10 or something of that, and then like usually we're not out of there, but like 4 at the latest.
Yeah,
3 or 4.
Anna said the same thing. Anna, I was like, she's like, what time are we gonna get done? You think? I was like 4, 4:30, something like that, maybe 5. She's like, really? I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna be there all night. We start at like 12 or noon, and we shoot for 5 hours, and that's it. I know what I want. I'm the only person on set. I'm shooting it. I'm gonna edit.
You're recording your sound. You're doing the whole thing. Yeah.
So I have all that.
Right.
And also I want to add on to before when we were talking about scheduling, like if you're making a movie, all right, and let's say you work a 9 to 5. Make the movie, like write the movie to like a night, like make it at night, schedule it like around your life, you know, so you can actually make something instead of making something that's so complicated during the day and you got to wait a certain amount or whatever.
Or even if you write something that could take place either one, you know what I mean? If you have that flexibility, you know, I've changed scenes from scripts. I'm like, oh, I got to shoot this on a Sunday during the day.
Yeah.
And it was originally set at night and it's outside. Well, I'll just have it during the day. It doesn't really affect the story. You know what I mean? Or I'll adjust the scene to make it work. Because in the end, you always got to remember the audience only knows what you show them. They don't know what you planned.
And you can easily, you know, change locations.
Yeah.
You know,
I've done things where if I, like when I'm breaking down my schedule on weekends or something, if I wanted a night shoot, I'd shoot it on a Friday. I'll schedule those scenes on a Friday night. And I'll keep that night short because like people are coming after work, right? So I'll do like 6 to midnight. It'll be a 6-hour shoot. And I'll just shoot a couple of scenes. And then if I have then I'll do a bigger day on Sunday where we shoot like, 9 to 6 or something. And if we have a weekend where we don't have any night, we'll do a Saturday, Sunday shoot. You know, stuff like that where it's really easy for people to commit to. Because most people, if you want older actors or you want college age actors, they've got college to deal with or jobs that they're working around, or the older actors who are working more of a normal job and they do the acting on the side. You're going to have those kind of things that you're going to come up. So you got to be flexible. Scheduling is a pain in the butt.
Now, sorry to interrupt you, but I want to add on to this. Now, some filmmakers, on the flip side, some filmmakers, when you tell them, write to what you have, write to, the locations you got and everything like that, and they're like, well, I can't write like that. It limits my creativity. It does this and it does that, and it's like, listen.
I just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah, I know. It's like, no, it does not. As a matter of fact, it makes you more fucking creative. I used like
limitations.
I used Anna's apartment. All right. For 3 films.
Right.
And they're all different.
And they all look different. Why? Because you shot them in different parts of the apartment.
Different shot. I made them one in the color, one's in black and white, one's a little bit more orange, stylized.
One's in the hallway, one's in the living room.
One's a crime one, one's like a thriller type, and the other one's like a comedy type.
Right.
And they're all different genres too. Just experiment and just use the same locations. Nobody's going to care.
Nobody is going to care.
Nobody cares.
I have used, just to give you an example, when we were doing Streets of Syndicate, we met Mike Combs, who owns a storage facility out in Alexandria, Kentucky. Mike's an awesome dude. Become a friend of mine.
Shout out,
right? And he's
probably not listening.
He has let us use his office. I used the office in the opening sequence of Syndicate. You used one of his rooms.
Darkest
actually,
Edge.
2 of his rooms in Darkest Edge.
It was supposed to be a hospital fucking office, and we used a fucking storage facility.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And you used the storage facility, and you just dressed it and shot it and lit it in a way that made it look like a hospital. When I did Confined, I had it originally written that they held these people hostage in a basement. I turned it into a storage unit. We used the same storage units in Syndicate. So for 3 different movies, we've utilized his location. And guess what? I'm using it again in Guilt.
Yeah. In
his back office, we're dressing it as, Matt, the priest turned private investigator's office. And we're just going to dress it. And you'll never know it's so you can take those things. Some of that does take practice, right? So if you're doing your shorts and you struggle with that, that's okay. I get that. So write, practice, try to figure out a way to do that. But if you're not good at writing, like I'm not good at writing shorts. I always struggle with that. But I went back after we did Hollow Ground and I was really frustrated. And I was like, I got to do something that's more me. And I wrote a short film called Last Words. And it was 2 dudes in an apartment. And it was about a hitman that come in. And he's going to execute this guy, and he's known as in the hitman, in the underground, as a hitman who always gives his victims a chance to give their last words before they die.
Okay.
And then the tables get turned on him. And that was the short.
That's a good story.
And it was a 6-minute short, but it was 2 dudes, and I cast 2 friends of mine, and we had cool shots and all this stuff. We shot it in a night. We shot it at night. We shot it on a Saturday night, and
shooting in one location makes you have to think of shots that make it more dynamic.
But I just shot the apartment. It was Chris's apartment, and he ended up. So we shot in his apartment. He had one of those cool, like in Clifton, in Cincinnati. And it was one of those older school looking apartments, and it had
That's why I shot in his apartment. I like the lights and everything like that.
Yeah, I just liked the aesthetic of his apartment. So we shot there. He was in it. It was great. I got my buddy Nathan, and we shot it. And I had a guy who helped me shoot it, and we used his camera, I think. And then I didn't have editing then, so he actually helped me edit it. And it turned out really good. But it gave me a chance, and then that set me up when I went and did Watch, which was my third feature. And those movies is what sort of became my film school. But you got to try to do that kind of stuff and write to, if you have an idea, be like, okay, how can I change this to fit?
Or adapt.
Well, just
adapting. Change could be a scary word. Just adapt your mindset to how, like, if you know you're not going to be able to make this movie, write something that you know you're going to be able to make. Like, if you're writing something and you got to find locations afterwards and you got to do that all afterwards, why? Why make it harder for yourself when you can just do it all in the script, write to what you have, and all you got to do is just cast. And
think about the people that you know who will let you come in and use their house.
Yeah.
Do they have a basement? Do they have a house? Do you know people who own offices or businesses or warehouses?
And if you don't,
garages,
that means you got to go out there and network.
All this kind of stuff. And then what ends up happening is as you make these short films, this is what I was telling this filmmaker. So I was like, what's going to happen as you make these short films? You're gonna meet actors. Some of them you're not going to dig. Others you're going to get along really well with. Those are the people you're going to become friends with and you're going to want to bring back again. Mm-hmm. Same thing as you bring on more crew throughout your shorts. If you start out doing it yourself, right? One of the actors, Gary Chin, who was in Streets of Syndicate. He's the one who introduced me to Mike, right? Mm-hmm. And then Mike ends up letting us use his house for a couple of different projects. Gary's let us use his house.
Right.
He knew his son managed a bar.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did Syndicate, he's like, oh yeah, my son manages a bar. They'll let you come in on a Sunday morning before we open because they didn't open till noon. So we went in and we shot 2 scenes in this bar and knocked it out in the morning before they opened. And I got that location for free. That's a cool ass looking bar.
That was another thing about when you mentioned like finding a bar location. Like I remember another one that I used to do like PA work on. We were at this one specific bar in Newport, and like the idea was that we were gonna like show up like right when the bar was closing and then shoot like into the night or whatever. But of course like and it was actually on the same short that I talked about earlier too. This director had a poor sense of scheduling. Very poor sense of scheduling. They made us show up while there was like at 8:00 while there were still people at the bar, and we had to wait like 3-4 hours. I'm like, why are we here?
Well, when we shot Devil's Point, Chris got us access to a club.
It's like I'm not mentioning names, but
right. When we shot Devil's Point, Chris got us access to a club. He knew the guy that owned the club, and the guy's like, "Well, you guys can come in. We don't open until 8 p.m." So we came in at like 7 in the morning, like early set call, which was really early for a set call. And we shot all day. I think it was probably the longest day I've ever shot. It was like 12 hours, which is the longest day I've ever personally shot because I don't normally shoot that long on my shoot days. And we got all that stuff in. Well, he let us come back again, and we shot there for Syndicate. Now, we didn't have to do nearly as much when we shot Syndicate. But when we shot Syndicate, when we originally were shooting that, the idea was the rooms that they were holding these people, that this mob boss would take people, was in the back of the club. Well, we didn't have a back of the club. So we changed it to storage units, and we made it look like the club and the storage facility were like in the same district. Mm-hmm. And they would just walk from the club to the storage facility, and we just shot it in a way that made it look like they went right from one to the other, although they were 2 completely different places, right? So we just tweaked that. So there's just all kinds of ways you can do it. Audience has no clue when you watch it. All you got to do is throw in a transition shot or have them walk down a hallway or whatever. Like there's all kinds of ways to do it. So these are all things you'll learn as you shoot these short films. But I go back to the thing of once you've done enough shorts and you're like, I kind of got this down. Like I'm pretty good at scheduling. I kind of know how I'm going to shoot. I know how I'm going to edit. You start to figure out what parts do you like to do. Do you like to edit? Do you like to shoot? All those kind of things. I tell everybody they should shoot and edit themselves, just like I think they should act. Mm-hmm. They should. Those are the 3 things. You gotta be knowledgeable
in that. Yes. At least
I think if you want to be a director, you should write, act, shoot, and edit. Those are the 4 things that you should do, even if you don't intend to do them long term, because you may find out you like one of them or more of them, right?
But you don't know that until you try it yourself.
You don't know until you do it.
I like all of it, so I do everything.
See, I like all of it, but the DP, which and I do like the DP, but I'm a very specific DP.
Your eating cereal performance and
was hysterical.
Acting is probably my least favorite, but I'll get in front of the thing if I have to. But.
So if you do all of those things, at least then you know how to communicate to that person that you hire to do that job down the road, and that's kind of the trick.
And even when you're on set, And it really helps if you're like an editor mindset when you're on set and you have like this scene and you have to get like 5 shots, but you only have time for 3. How are you going to edit that fucking shit, you know, in the scene? So you have to get, you have to focus.
You got to know when you can cut stuff.
What's more important in the scene? What do we have to focus on?
Right.
You're never going to know until you do it.
We shot a scene in Confined on my porch. It's 4 characters. It's 4 pages. In Hollywood terms, that would take 2 days to shoot because they shoot like 2 pages a day. I was running camera, so I was shooting the movie myself. I DP'd the movie myself. And we did the entire scene in 3 hours, and I got 35 different takes.
Nice.
I got close-ups, over the shoulders, wide shots. We had a guy get shot. We got a guy get slammed against the wall. Like we had stunt. We had the whole thing. 4 different characters. You got all those eye lines.
You didn't overshoot though, did you?
Didn't overshoot. Basically, I knew because I shot listed very carefully. I knew exactly pretty much how I was going to edit it. So I knew I'm only going to use this wide shot for this part. So that's all I got. And I knew I would use this 2 shot. So the scene has like a first half and a second half. So I shot the first half with certain shots, and then I shot the second half with certain shots. By the time we were done, we did 35 different takes in 3 hours.
Yep.
Now, here's the benefit. I set it on the porch. It was during the day, so I didn't have to light, and I was able to literally just move from setup to setup without any downtime.
I always like to try to use as much natural lighting as I can.
And that just saved me. Now, it fit the aesthetic of that movie, the way that I shot it, very gritty, dark, all that kind of stuff. But that's just an example of something that you can pull off, and it's one of my favorite scenes in the movie because it's intense. The acting is really good. The dude gets killed at the end of the scene, and it comes out of nowhere, and all this stuff. So but I wouldn't have been able to pull that off 10, 15 years ago, right? I wouldn't have been able to pull that off had I not done all the other things that I've done.
And you know that you don't need, like, at one point it becomes ridiculous. Like, at one point you don't need all these fucking people on a goddamn set. At one point in your mind, like me as a filmmaker, and I'm fucking, like...
Plus you're also worrying about giving them something to do because you've got, like... You know what I mean? Because you don't have the
budget anyway.
We've both fallen victim to that mentality.
And there's no fucking reason on a short film... all right, to have like 20 people on a fucking set. There's just no reason for it. There's no reason for it.
It's just gonna.
It's just gonna make.
It's what it's. I know we comment about Robert Rodriguez a lot, but I love the mentality where he uses the analogy of someone who's overweight. You're slower. You're less efficient. Right. When you lose the weight, you become faster and more efficient. It's the same thing on a movie set.
And it doesn't mean that's going to be bad. You know what you're doing still. Yeah. You still know what you're doing. You're just going faster with it because you're saving time.
I highly recommend checking out, I've talked about this movie before, Josh Caldwell in Negative.
Right.
Check out all the behind the scenes of how he made that movie. Because he did it a very specific way. Like he DP'd it himself and ran the camera himself. So on most days, it was him, the sound person, and the actors, and that was it. And maybe his producer. And that was all that was on set. And then he's like, then I knew the scenes I was going to scale up to. So we had a big fight scene. I knew I was going to need the stunt coordinator and the special effects makeup person. And we had a shootout, and he used real guns. So he had to have like a gun wrangler and the sheriff and the whole deal. So he scaled up for that scene. But the rest of the movie, he didn't do that. So that would be like having the stunt coordinator on set and not needing them, right? Like it's very, very planned. And that's how you have to do it. And that's what you'll learn in those moments. And you'll start to get it down. But once you're ready, go do the feature. But what I recommend to do is when you're going from the short to the feature, treat the first feature the way you did your early shorts. Don't go nuts and be like, well, it's my feature. Now I got to do Hollywood. Now I got to do Hollywood. Now I got to do all these things. Yeah. Still treat it like you did your short films where you're like, what's the bare minimum I need to make this movie? Do I need a DP? Do I need a sound person? What locations do I need? How many characters do I have in the movie? What characters can I get rid of? When you're writing a feature script, you can say, okay, well, I can have this character do the same thing as this other character and get rid of that character. Like you can do those kind of things.
You're applying the same thing from the short to the feature, but you're also adding the business element to it. Who's this movie for? Who am I making it for? What's it going to take to make this movie? How am I going to get it out there? Marketing. All that bullshit comes with it. So that's a whole other element that you need to add on to making the film. Right. And also you got to consider that in the script phase. If you make a movie and it's not marketable, what the fuck?
Right.
Why are you making it? For you, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. The Sean, the hobbyist filmmaker we had on, he does his movies for himself. And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
for people who want to actually make something and make money, like
you got to think about that.
It's a business. Yeah. It's a product.
What's the saying? The show business, and there's twice as many letters in business as there is show.
Exactly. Yeah. So. That reminds me of this great quote I remember. There was an interview with Paul Thomas Anderson where he talks about meeting Stanley Kubrick. I believe he was making Eyes Wide Shut at the time, and he talks about meeting Stanley Kubrick, and Paul Thomas Anderson's like, do you always have like this like small amount of people on set? And Stanley Kubrick's like, well, how many people do you need?
Yep.
And Paul Thomas Anderson was like, after that, I felt like such an Hollywood asshole because I was like, why?
Why do I have all these people?
Exactly, yeah.
Well, Kubrick, like he's known to be this crazy person who takes forever to shoot his movies, and he's one of the early ones that adapted the idea that if I have less crew, I can spend that money on more days, and then I have more time to make
under budget, and he came in on time.
On every movie, I think Eyes Wide Shut's the only one he didn't.
Yeah, Eyes Wide Shut was
not by much.
Eyes Wide Shut was longer, I think.
Yeah, but he always had like less people, so he had more time.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is like if you go straight from film school to Hollywood, or you go to film school and you learn the film school way of doing it, you're in that mentality that I need all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you come from the indie world where you got to do it all by yourself, you have such a different mentality.
Basically, we're not saying our way is the right way. Let's get that straight. But we're saying our way is just easier because it's efficient. You get to you experience more than in film school where they only have this one mindset and it's only this mindset, and if you have another thought, that's incorrect. And that's not.
They tell you
we're just trying to show you. We're just trying to show you different mindsets of like, here's a way that you could do it as opposed to like this is.
Look at some of the filmmakers that you love. Christopher Nolan. That's how he made his first movie. Shot it on Saturdays. Shot and edited.
And
himself.
Next to windows, used natural lighting. He didn't use one fucking light in that thing.
Barely used any lighting. Right. Maybe.
And he shot and he put it in black and white specifically because there's no lighting.
Look at recent filmmakers like Adam Wingard, who's done no budget, or Aaron Moorhead and Justin Benson, who just did Synchronic, which is on Netflix, and it's a big movie with Anthony Mackie.
They started out Jungle. Those guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
They
shout out to those guys.
All that stuff. Like these guys did this kind of stuff and did as many things they could themselves to get the movie made. And then each movie they did something. They tried to elevate it a little bit.
And just to add on to that, people, early filmmakers or first time filmmakers or whatever stage you're in, you don't know what you don't know. Oh, at least for I take that back. Earlier filmmakers, first time filmmakers who are just starting to do it, you don't know what you don't know. So there's a lot of movies out there that have been made for no budget, and they look like they've been made for millions, but that's because they know the craft.
They didn't do that right out of the chute, though. Mm. They built up to that.
Yeah.
To accomplish that.
Some people do. Some people just go in and make the short, make a film, and it's perfect. That's very rare.
That's the lottery ticket mentality.
Make one, and then all of a sudden, but
if you, the thing is, here's the deal. If you take this short film path we're talking about, spend a year or two making as many shorts as you can, and then go make your feature. Take that feature, and do as bare bones as you can. And then you get that feature out, and then you go make another feature. What's going to happen is as you continue to build that, if you are successful, when you do get a chance to do something a little bit bigger, you're going to be so much more prepared for the responsibility that brings. Like, I'm getting ready to do Guilt. Not a huge movie. It's very small. But I have investors now.
Mm-hmm.
So I got other people's money on the line, right? I would have not been prepared for that previous to these other films that I did. But because I went through not only making these other movies, but also distributing them, I learned the distribution world. And I'm a person who needs to do something to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have a lot of money on the line. Like, I did Syndicate for $2,000. I did Confined for $2,000. We did Devil's Point for $3,000, right? So I did 3 movies for less than what I'm getting ready to make this one for. So it's like you have that ability to do that because you don't have a lot of money on the line. So now you're prepared when you do get to that point where there is either other people's money on the line or you get hired to do whatever happens to you. You're in your journey. But that really needs you need that time to learn, and you need to do it when there's a lot less risk. Basically, when you're doing these little short films, there's no risk.
Mm-hmm.
Time.
Nothing.
And the time's going to be valuable because you're going to learn.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what film school you go to. You got to go make these things to learn.
Yeah.
The film school is giving you the basic knowledge of storytelling.
Theories.
maybe
that's another thing too.
maybe
It's
technical
like,
stuff, like that kind of.
That's another thing too that is a bit of a misconception, that you have to go to film school to learn all this stuff. No, you don't have to. You don't have to go to film school. Like it's like what Tarantino always says, right? Like you don't have to know all the shit. Like if you just exactly. If you just love movies, you can't help but you
can't help but make a good movie. That's one of his quotes. And I agree with that, Nick. I'm glad you mentioned that. He's like, you don't need to know what a fucking 35 is.
Exactly.
You don't even know all the lights. You don't need to know none of that shit. None of that shit's important. That's what he said. He's like, if you just love movies, you love cinema, and you have a passion for it, you can't help but make a good movie. And I believe that, because if you really want it, if you really want to make a movie,
I disagree with that a little bit, but
it depends on the person.
But I appreciate the mentality that he's trying to.
It helps, but it's more of like some filmmakers are not really filmmakers. They just want to be the title.
Some people want to be involved with what they think is this cool lifestyle or whatever. It's not a. I don't know where this comes from.
It's not a glamorous lifestyle.
It's really hard. You're basically half the time you're sitting at a computer slaving over footage. Like that's not.
I'm 26 and my hair is like I got gray.
And I guess also people think, and I guess also people think that like the title of being an indie filmmaker is that there's maybe some sort of pretension there, like there's some sort of pretentious nature to that. That's really not true. I mean, like usually,
no, that's really not.
And I want to mention something that we seek out this information. We seek out
how. That's a really good point.
We seek it out. We want to know how we can make things for less. How we can make things not just for less because we're cheap or anything. It's just because movies are fucking expensive, and there are very much DIY and shortcuts you can do to make it affordable and cheaper for people like us. And I think we seek out a lot of information with these documentaries and these other filmmakers who aren't popular. But they've made films that we want to make on a micro budget level or on a low budget level, whatever, but they're fucking low budgets. Mm-hmm. So watching people doing it, watching their movies, seeing how they did it and what they did is also something filmmakers need to do. They need to seek out the work, and the filmmakers that already did it, take that and apply it to yourself and your own fucking
There's no
way.
excuse nowadays not to learn the things you're talking about, because between podcasts, YouTube channels, behind the scenes stuff,
Indie Film Hustle, Filmmaker Freedom, Show Don't Tell. There's already 3 podcasts you can go and you fucking learn.
All kinds of crap about
those 3 podcasts is your film fucking school.
Right. And then if you need to learn something specific on a certain editing software or something, there's YouTube tutorials for days.
There's fucking every painting, every cinema painting, every frame of
painting. Every frame of painting.
And there's like all these filmmaker stuff going on. You can even Edgar Wright style. You can learn different filmmaker styles. You can learn.
That's how I learned to color grade. I taught myself how to color grade by looking up a YouTube tutorial. Learn how to use the color grade tool in Final Cut, and that's how I color graded my own movies.
And that goes back to what you don't know. What you don't know, you have to seek it out.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to go. Oh, I don't know how to do that. Let me go figure out how to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's the Robert Rodriguez mentality. When you can be technical and creative, you can accomplish anything. And that was kind of his point. And I love that mentality simply because if you have done all of these different things, if something happens and you need to do it, you can jump in and do it. I don't love to DP myself, but I do like it. Mm-hmm. So in certain movies I'll hire one, and certain movies I won't. It just depends on the style and how I'm shooting it and all these kind of things. But I know if I need to do it, I can.
Exactly.
Because I've done it. I put myself through it.
And if somebody tries to fuck you on set and you're like, no. It's like, no.
Or
I know how this works.
You learn tricks and you can say, no, here's how we're going to do it because this will save time and money.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll accomplish the same goal, right? So there's all those things that you learn from doing that. And that's super important. And then if you do get a chance to do something bigger, it's like Rodriguez talked about when he went into Desperado and he was able to make this big action movie for $7 million, which sounds like a lot of money to us. But in Hollywood terms, that's nothing, especially back then in the 90s. And they're like, how did they make this for less than $20 million? You know what I mean? Like
that's still kind of
that is what gave him a career, is being able to make these movies so quick, so fast, and so cheap. Mm-hmm. It used to be the saying you can get it fast, cheap, or good, but you only get 2 of the 3. And that's not the case anymore. You can do all 3. And that's that's the thing. When I tell people how fast I edit, they're like, what? Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll shoot and edit this thing in 4 months. Yeah. And they're like, that's crazy.
Also helps editing while you're shooting too.
Yeah.
That also
Now,
helps
but I
as
also
well.
spread my shooting schedule out
Yes,
because of
right.
my life. I have to.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I could, I mean, I'm shooting a 14-day schedule. If I could shoot that Monday through Friday in 3 weeks, I would, and then I'd go edit. You know, that's the way I would prefer to do it.
Yeah.
But I'd still edit the thing in a couple months. I'd still knock it out quick just because I edit quickly because I already know kind of what I want to do.
I want to mention something. I think you guys might like this. So there's interviews all over the place, but there was this interview from like a San Diego Comic-Con with Sam Raimi, and Sam Raimi was on it.
I think I know what you're talking about.
And this filmmaker goes, this guy he hasn't made a film before. He's like, what advice would you give for a first time filmmaker trying to make his own movie, trying to do what you do? He's like, first off, what you need to do is find people that you can work with.
That's the one.
And he's like, do it, shoot on weekends, Saturday, Sunday, make a movie, like shoot one weekend and then shoot the next weekend, and then do the editing one weekend and then turn around and make the film again. Like he's saying, if you have only weekends, do it on the weekends. Do it one weekend, make the other film the next weekend, keep making other films. His whole thing was keep making movies. Mm-hmm. Make it on weekends if you have to.
Don't use your life as an excuse to not do it.
Yeah.
Because
you're just finding excuses.
You're finding excuses not to do it.
Movie.
Yes.
And that's not going to get a movie made.
No.
You know what I mean?
If you really want to get a movie made, you get the movie made. I've had, for me,
I don't have a lot of patience for those people who are like, oh, well, I have this. I haven't done it for this reason or that reason. I just don't. I don't have any patience with that because I'm just like, that's crap.
Yeah.
You're telling yourself that so that you can feel better.
Oh, I need these specific type of cameras that I see
gotta
in these
have, I gotta
Hollywood
have this
sets.
thing in the
We
movie.
have to shoot it in 4K.
Yeah.
We have to do
I
this.
totally
I gotta
see
have this
that.
location and it's a castle.
It's like pull
What?
out. it's like
what?
grab in your pocket, pull out your phone.
Then go
there's
make
your camera.
then go make a different movie. Because look, if you have one movie to make, you're not a filmmaker.
Yeah.
How many scripts have we talked about that we have already written that are just sitting there, or story ideas that we have put away that we want to write? Right? I mean, I could basically make a movie a year for the rest of my life, and it would all be my own ideas, and I'll be fine because I have that many ideas. I don't know if any of them are going to be good or not right now, but the ideas are there. Mm-hmm. So you just have a lot of different stories to tell. If you're not that person who has all these stories, then you're not a filmmaker. You should have these ideas. And so if you have an idea that's too big, put it away and go make something else. Plenty of filmmakers out there.
Nobody's going to judge you.
Christopher Nolan had the script written for Inception 10, 12 years before he made it.
Yes.
Because he couldn't make it when he wrote it. Mm-hmm. So he put it away. He went and made other stuff first.
James Cameron had Avatar back in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's right.
So and he was already big by then, right? Mm-hmm. But the technology hadn't caught up. So there's all kinds of things, but you have other movies you can go make. So go make those things that are the bare bones style movies.
So Billy, all in all, what can filmmakers take away from this fucking conversation that's almost an hour long?
Stop with excuses.
Stop making excuses.
Stop making excuses.
Okay.
Absolutely the number one thing. And stop trying to worry about it being perfect.
Thank you.
And go make something. And if it turns out like shit, who cares? Go do it again.
Make it to what you have.
Because in the end, if you keep making stuff, you're going to be one of the few people who actually make stuff. There are so many people out there.
You can't make your 50th until you make your first.
Right.
This goes back. This goes back to the sports analogy. I like that. We're gonna get back into that, but that goes back to the sports analogy. The same thing, where if you don't at least swing, you're never going to hit the fucking ball.
Yeah.
But if you keep swinging, if you keep making movies, eventually one of them is going to hit.
99% of people in any industry do not just show up and be good at it. They have to work at it and get better. And there's a reason why when you started a company and you work your way up the ladder and the corporate ladder or whatever, there's a reason why you have to work your way up. You don't just start out as an executive. You don't start out as a general.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. You got to figure out how to get there first. So there's things you have to learn along the way. Now, you do have to understand when you are ready to make the jump from one thing to the next, whether it's a bigger short or going from the short to the feature, you got to kind of be able to internalize and self-evaluate and be self-aware to know it's time to do it. Or you're going to be one of those filmmakers who we talked about who gets stuck in the short film world. Mm-hmm. So I'll end with that.
And I want to add one more thing. You have to understand, you have to deliberate practice. Know what you're practicing, know what you're doing, and get better at it. Know your weaknesses.
Couldn't agree more.
And keep going with it.
Absolutely.
And one of these days, your film, the features, once you make that jump, you keep making them and you keep making them. One of them is bound to hit.
Yep.
So
Couldn't agree more. That's a good note to end on, my friend.
Great note to end on. And on that note, we'd like to thank you all for joining us for another episode of Step by Step, the Micro Budget Filmmaker. Tune in soon. We'll have more for you guys.